All right, everybody, is One Piece an investable TCG at this point in time? Today, we're going to look over it and have a discussion on whether or not you should be looking at investing into One Piece right now. All right, everybody, I'm Andy with Northwoods TCG, and today we're going to be taking a look at One Piece. This has been heavily requested in comments on Discord and also being asked on lives to cover One Piece a little bit on the investability of this particular TCG. Is it investable? Is there a good opportunity to jump in on investments? And what are we seeing currently with the One Piece market? Is there opportunities that we just don't see and could flourish as time moves on? So today we're going to take a look at OP 1 through 5. We're just going to look at the data factors of it. And at the end, I'm going to tell you what my feelings are on One Piece in general when it comes down to the investability of this particular TCG with it being so new. So without further ado, let's kick into OP1 and check out where we're at currently with this particular set. All right, guys, here we are at the first one, OP1 Romance Dawn. That's right, this was the release of it, and this is where it all began. Of course, there was some craziness when this first released, and as you can see, we're up to $540 currently on this particular set. Once again, not bad, doing extremely well, but we do see this sometimes with the release of a first set. Number one, print sometimes a little bit off. Sometimes there's some things you got to be looking at when it comes down to that. So there's definitely some things to be considering when we're looking at these particular products. But with it being the first one, highest demand because it was new, everybody wanted it. Today, we're going to take a look down here and see this is what we're looking at for the market chart so far. So in the last year, we've got a up and down. When it was released, we went up to about $289, and then we kind of dropped down, and now we've kind of done this slow march upwards. Now, this is typically really good when you're looking at a market in general and what you should be considering when it comes down to these TCGs. So overall, we're seeing some really good stable movement in the upward direction. We've seen this little bit of a build, a little bit of an up, and then we're seeing this nice consistent kind of hacksaw way up the chain, and you're continually seeing that upward trend and continuing to move up. So overall, this is a really good view, and it looks at a TCG, and especially a start out, to see a market go down and correct and come back up is very important to me when it comes down to your overall looking at an investment in a TCG to see if the market is behaving like we would like. So next one we're going to kick into is OP2. All right, guys, here we are at OP2, which is going to be Paramount War. That's right. This was the second release in the One Piece franchise, in the One Piece TCG. This one is also doing rather well, $315 currently per booster box. Overall, if we go down to the last year, we're seeing kind of a similar trend. We're seeing that kind of up-down movement. And the nice thing I always like is when I'm looking at graphs and market charts, I don't like to see like straight drops and straight ups. That doesn't show market volatility. That just flat out just shows that the market is, or it's brand new and people are just hyping and foaming. They're selling fast and they're buying fast. To me, what we're seeing here in this graph, and I'm going to look down below. If you see the graph down below, we're seeing that kind of gradual spiking up and down to a trough, to a low, and then you're seeing that spiking up back to a higher value. And we're not just seeing it like go to a peak and then drop really low and then go to a peak and drop really low. We're seeing the peaks and valleys always increase on themselves. So if you look at the one peak, you're going to be at this price. You go to the next, then you go down to a drop, and then that's going to cause the market to show that you're going down in price. Then the next peak is higher than the last one. The next drop isn't as low as the last one. The next peak is higher than that. That's the highest. And then the next trough is not as low as the last low. Those are great things. That means that it is organically growing and getting momentum. It's not like someone's buying and putting really high prices on these things and there's so little demand that it's just going up in price. No, we're seeing really good stair-stepping effect on these particular items to show organic and well-perceived growth. What happens is in a market is you have supply, you have demand. As the demand rises, people raise their price. As they raise their price, they sometimes overshoot the value of what the most of the people are willing to pay. And then you see that little bit of drop. So people will start lowering the price to try and catch that drop, or more people will start buying the cheaper products on the list. But then what happens is those cheaper products disappear again, and you see that next big jump, and then you see people chew the lighter products out, and then you see that next big jump. This is totally organic, and this is something I really truly like to see when I'm looking at graphs. I don't like to see these very smooth up and down graphs because that just shows that a couple people might be selling things, or over in general, people are hyping and just buying because it's there and then regretting, and then you're seeing them be sold really low because nobody's buying it any longer. So you get that first initial buy, like on a set release, you'll see the graphs just shoot straight up, like a straight line, and then the next week you'll watch it drop straight down. That is not something you want to see in a marketable graph. This is more what you're looking for, that continual staggering up and down like we're seeing currently on this particular set, especially in the last 3 months of OP2. This is a perfect, a pristine graph. This is exactly what I like to see when it comes down to a market watch in a Pokemon TCG or in a Yu-Gi-Oh TCG or even in One Piece. This is exactly what I like to see even in stocks. This is a great way to see stock markets too, to show overall strength in this particular hobby. We're going to go into the next one, which is going to be Pillars of Strength, OP3. Once again, we're going down in price a little bit. We're down to $220, but once again, we're getting newer in time. Just like Pokemon sets, typically the older sets have more value, and as you move through the timeline, they get more expensive. So we're looking at $220 for this one. This graph here is another one. I'm not seeing as much volatility in this particular set. Overall, I'm seeing more of that smooth, gradual gain, and this is only 3 months. So let's take a 1 year look at this. Once again, you're seeing a lot of those. See how I'm talking about how those lines seem to just smooth out? So you're seeing that initial release where the price goes way up at the right side of the graph or left side of the graph. You're seeing that nice gradual, or that nice spike up, and that's when it was released. And then you get that little bit of drop, and then it just smoothly drops down to a trough. And now we're coming back up as supply starts to disappear. We've got one little, downward trough right there, but in general, it's a pretty smooth moving, which means number one, there could be a shortage of supply. So you're seeing this go up because there isn't enough supply for the demand. Once again, you're getting that hype, that excitement, you're getting people buying into it, and you're seeing that nice smooth graph. I'd rather see more of a jagged chart where people are actually buying into it and actually growing. This is just people buying the product because it's on the shelf. And that's another concern when we're looking at these particular graphs. But it's one of those things that it's new. It's not very old overall when it comes down to the hindsight of TCGs. It was only released in between February and May here on the chart. And seeing this kind of graph is pretty normal for something of this age. It's going to be kind of curious to see how this kind of pans out as you're seeing this kind of downward movement following the spike here at the end, and see how far that trough goes. Are we going to plateau, and then are we going to see a spike? These are all things that may be discovered as this TCG continues to get older, especially with OP3. Moving on to OP4. So we're into Kingdoms of Intrigue. So this is going to be OP4. We're at about $160 for this particular booster box. Once again, it's a new product, guys. We're getting newer and newer and newer. We're coming right up on the door of the recent release that just came out here, and this one was the one prior to it, so we don't have a lot of age. Once again, you go down to the chart, we're just seeing a straight up. We go to the 6 months chart, you got that down, a little drop. Let's go to 1 year. Let's just be consistent. So here you go. You got the drop all the way down in price, and then you're seeing the spike right back up. So overall, it's seeing a very similar trend when it comes down to what we've been seeing with a new release out of TCG. You got that big spike going up right here, and then you got this drop following right after it. And that's just definitely going to be one of those things that's going to happen on a new release. We don't have much data on this particular set, and we don't know exactly what the trending history is right now. We don't have a large amount of time period on this. So we're definitely going to be looking at this futuristically if you continue to watch One Piece. And we'll get into that a little bit at the end when we do the closeout. The last one we're going to be looking at, of course, is going to be OP5. So OP5 Awakening the New Era was the recent release of this particular set. And this is where we're talking about. Now you're getting into the brand new, just released set. We're looking at $250 currently on here. But as you see, we're getting that release. So in December, we really got pre-releases here in that early time frame of this graph. The 1 year really doesn't exist. You go back to the last 3 months because it was released just, I believe it was only a couple weeks ago. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know why I didn't look at the release date on this particular one for whatever reason. I should have. But you sit here and look at it, we're seeing the pre-release, then you're seeing that big spike going up, and that's people buying into the release, of course, the excitement, the hype, the FOMO, like we see in Pokemon sets, and you're seeing now following that drop out. So we're starting to see that tail end dropping out, and we're probably going to see that continue to fall or plateau, depending on the demand or the supply that's available for this. I don't know the release. I don't follow close enough to know how well the release has been. If there's enough product for the demand that's currently out there with this particular set, those are all things that I don't know very specifically. But just looking at the data, I'm seeing a very common trend to any kind of release when it comes down to a TCG. We're seeing that nice upward movement, that nice spike right at the beginning where you can get maximum dollar and pre-release and all that other things. Even Paldea Fates, like the 6-pack bundles and those kind of products, spike extremely high pre-release, and then as you get close to that pre-release time, people will keep hyping and FOMO and think they're going to miss out on this particular booster box, and then they pay ridiculous pricing, and then it just completely falls out and drops down to a regular price as the release occurs and as more product hits the market from distributors and from vendors, as LGS has put more out, and of course as TCG Player gets more and more vendors putting product out here, we will see this continue to drop out. And my prediction is just based on how the other ones have performed to this point in time, that this one will probably follow a similar track here shortly. We're going to see this one continue kind of slide downhill a little bit, and then all of a sudden it'll catch legs and then probably go the other way as the set kind of matures a little bit down the road. So with that being said, we're going to kick in and talk about this and have a closing on this. All right, guys, so let's do a little bit of a closing on One Piece. To me, currently, when it comes down to One Piece, I'm seeing a lot of promise. You know, compared to some other TCGs in release, we're actually seeing that market volatility. We're seeing that organic growth. We're seeing a lot of continued excitement for the older sets and not big drops. Overall, it's being played quite a bit. Even my LGS has been playing One Piece now every week now. They went from bi-weekly schedule to an every week schedule with One Piece, so they have enough demand that people are looking for it. Is that good? Yes. Once again, you have an IP that has an anime already built behind it. So you already have a IP built. You already have something that's organically started the TCG before it was released out as a card game. And we are also seeing there be playability. There's actually LGS is building more functionality for the actual play of One Piece. Like I said, my LGS locally here has gone to 2 or 1 a week versus 1 every other week. So there is that growth even in the actual playability and the people participating in it currently. But I'm going to go to the but now. The but to me is with any TCG, especially in the first 5 years, guys, any business. The first 5 years are the most questionable on how well it will perform. Is it a good time to be spending this high dollar money on this TCG? Well, there's one thing that I'm going to put up as a word of caution, and Rudy at Alpha Investments has been saying it. We've seen announcements from One Piece and from Bandai that they're going to do reprints. How much of that reprint's going to hit the floor is going to be a very big question. When we've seen Bandai's history in the past and how they've performed with reprints, they like to just bury stuff in reprints a lot of times, and whether or not the market can absorb all of that is going to be a real question. Is it going to be too much for people to ever want to absorb, especially on a new TCG? It's not like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, or Magic, where there's multiple generations of people trying to buy these products. You're really limited to a first gen trying to maintain gameplay and also maintain maybe getting into some collectability on some of these cards. Because, of course, now people's mindsets, especially in my generations on TCGs, is look for collectability, look for investability versus just the gameplay like it used to be back when the first releases of Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon all happened. So am I jumping in and going to, after looking at these graphs and really checking these out, am I jumping in and starting to buy One Piece? Currently, no. I think that if you were to take some time and wait until after some reprints, if you wanted to take a stab at these particular sets, I would wait and see if reprints come. Overall, I don't think that there's going to be a huge spike again in OP1. I think that we're seeing kind of a downward trend currently on OP1. And all the rest of them, we're kind of seeing a downward trend. And I think that could be a part of people thinking there's a reprint coming because of the announcements that have come from Bandai and from people like Rudy at Alpha Investments. I'm sure if he's saying it, I'm sure a lot of other One Piece creators are also doing the exact same statements, using Bandai's statement and broadening it out to a content creation point where they're actually talking about it and saying the dangers of this when it comes down to One Piece. The other thing with Bandai is that they tend to have some really good success with the TCG, and for whatever reasons, they find a way to screw it up. You know, you go back to Digimon when it was first released, and I remember when Digimon came out, they had some really good ideas. They had some really good concepts. They had the cartoon and the other anime part of it, so they had a growing IP, but then they started doing weird things with the sets and the releases, and pretty soon, people lost interest in it just because of the way that Bandai continued to release the TCG, and it kind of died for a long period of time. Now, I know it's back, but for a long period of time there, it went away because the fan base just wasn't following it, and the TCG just wasn't stable enough to maintain growth, and people were kind of leaving it because they were kind of frustrated with the way that it was being put out. Same thing with Dragon Ball Z. We had an insurgence from Bandai of Dragon Ball Z, especially with Dragon Ball Z Realm of Gods. It really pushed Dragon Ball Z up. It became playable. We saw people playing it like ILCS had every other week we were playing Dragon Ball Z. It was very common. It was getting to get a little bit of traction behind it. They had a good chase for the people that were collectors and investors with them God Rares, where it was very difficult to pull the 2 God Rares in Realm of Gods. But then the next set that they release, absolute junk. Once again, that's Bandai's main thing that they do. They really have an issue with staying consistent on TCGs to give you that good balance of really, really fun, really playable, and then on top of it being collectible or investable, where people want to be involved with it. They want to chase that collection piece. They want to do something with that collection. So once again, take it with a grain of salt. I think that after reprints go through, especially of like the first couple ones, if they do reprints, that would be a time maybe if you missed out on the first wave and not getting them pre-releases, not getting it at the first lows, that you can possibly pick them up at that point with some lows and get an opportunity to really jump into it at that point. And once again, it's a risk. It's a very high risk situation, as in with MetaZoo and as in with a lot of new TCGs, even Flesh and Blood when it first came out. It's a high risk game. At any point in time, they could decide that this isn't working and just retract it. At any point in time, the favorability for the game players might change and no longer use it. They might go to something new. And maybe Pokemon will have a very high success rate in Magic. And, there's a lot of things that could switch and turn the switches on new TCGs where people no longer do it. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying that that's a scenario it's going to be. It's just these words of caution I'm putting out there when I'm looking at an investment, especially something so new. I mean, we're just over a year now with One Piece since the first release, and that is a big concern is, once again, if you jump in too much too fast and all of a sudden it collapses and they decide it's not working at any point in time in the near future, then you're going to have a problem. Once again, though, if you don't take the jump, you might miss the opportunities. There might be some very good opportunities if it is successful to continue to grow in that hobby and grow your collection and have a really good investment if it's successful. Look at Flesh and Blood, that first sets that came out, the first edition sets that came out. Welcome to Wrath and all those. They're freaking expensive, right? They did really well. They've got a healthy, growing TCG. We have gameplay of it. We have tournament players. We've got everything going on with those particular sets, and we see really good success. And that could also be the story of One Piece and its success futuristically when it comes down to One Piece investments. And are these One Piece investments going to exist here in 5 years? That's the real question. That's always the risk, the high risk game that you play with a new TCG. Is will it make 5 years? Will we see success? Will Bandai continue to maybe find a way to actually stabilize One Piece to where they could get that long-term gain and growth and longevity on a TCG? It'd be really awesome to see if they can do it. But I have a lot of question marks when it comes down to Bandai and their past practices. If they start implementing them on One Piece, we could see some really big situations occur when it comes down to the overall investments of One Piece. Now, gameplay, it's all free game. It looks like it's a lot of fun. I've watched some tournament play of it. I haven't personally built any battle decks or done anything with One Piece myself, but I have seen some people really have fun playing it and really having some excitement in the actual tournament play and playing each other when it comes down to One Piece. So overall, to me, it's got a little bit better than a 50-50 chance. I think you probably got a 60-40 on these for One Piece to be good. One thing I'm going to be cautious, of course, is going to be when it comes down to Bandai. Bandai is the wild card when it comes down to the overall success of this particular TCG, and they've been the wild card when it comes down to success of other TCGs that they currently hold and use. So, couple double-edged swords on this one. It's kind of your call. Overall, I'm not personally doing it just because I'm committed to some other things, but I wouldn't mind personally if they get reprints, especially of OP1, 2, and 3, even 4, 5. If they do reprints of those, well, probably not 5, but if they do 1, 2, and 3, which I'm guessing they might, even 4 possibly, that at that reprint time when they dump, I would maybe consider buying some and actually putting a couple boxes away at that point in time. That would be the time when I would actually consider it if it's going to happen, but we'll see. If I have the money to do it, I might grab 1 box of each just to put it away and see how it performs over the next 5 years. If anything, I'll just open it up and have fun. It is what it is. But just keep that in mind. Keep it completely expendable money at this point in time. You could potentially not see any gains in it in a few years, especially as things kind of develop and it ages and matures. So that's all going to be things that'll be really questionable on how it performs futuristically. It's just really too early to tell whether or not it's all going to hold together. And I usually like to see a couple years or maybe 2-3 years of history of a TCG before I really start dumping money into it and taking them shots, hoping that it can do extremely well. So hopefully this helps you guys out. Hopefully this is some good information. At least gets your brain turning in a different way. Definitely watch the pros and cons of going into One Piece. Of course, the pros are, if it does go and it goes big, you're going to do extremely well. Those boxes will do really well overall futuristically. But on the other hand, if it does fail, once again, if Bandai does what Bandai has done, we might continue to see issues where it may not be as prosperous come year or two down the road. So just keep that in mind. Definitely something to consider as you're investing into One Piece. If that's your cup of tea and you want to go for it, definitely look at it, especially for even myself. I'm looking at it for a reprint. If it happens, I might jump in on some of the booster boxes when the reprint occurs. That might be a great time to jump in on it and put just a couple booster boxes, 1-2 booster boxes away of each set. Just store them and see what happens and let it ride. And you could do that with every single first prints of One Piece going into the near future, just by one booster box. I mean, if you got the money to spend on it, it isn't going to hurt anything to put it in the closet. So that would be my suggestion overall when it comes down to One Piece. Hopefully this helps you out on your decision making, gives you a little bit more clarity or maybe a direction to go when it comes down to One Piece. Other than that, if you did find this information useful and hopefully I've earned your subscription today, make sure you hit that subscribe before you leave. Also, hit that notify so that you know when we're doing videos such as this and in the Pokemon space, which is what we normally do. And also be sure that you hit that like button. It's greatly appreciated to hit that like. Helps out the channel a lot, and it always moves things along really smooth. One thing to note before we move any further is that we do have our live coming up on Tuesday. Make sure to join us on Tuesday for just our normal 8 p.m. live. Also, go ahead and check us out the following Tuesday, February 20th, as we'll have Java Akuma on here with our Choose Your Path series, which will be coming up on February 20th at 8 p.m. Central Time, same as our live, to go over Java Akuma's growth in the Pokemon TCG and how he has been successful in it. And if you're interested to see his perspective, please join us then. It'd be greatly appreciated. Otherwise, check out the videos at the end, and we'll see you next time here on Northwoods TCG.